Hey, it's Mal again. Here we are on another adventure. I'll tell you this, there's nothing quite like camping by a river and listening to the tumble of the water all night. Ah, yes, that makes for a great sleep. I've got some coffee on the fire, pull up a log, and I'll tell you about how all the haunting of Gilly Creek got started, fair enough. If you haven't watched the episode entitled In the Beginning, you might want to watch that one first. What is told in that story helps understand this one, that said, everything you need to know for this story is understanding the patriarch of Gilly Creek, none other than the Reverend Thomas Wise, who purchased the land and moved there at the young age of 20 in 1765. He had built a cabin along the small winding Gilly Creek, and high above on Laurel Ridge in an alpine meadow, he built the Gilly Creek Baptist Church. Long before this, Thomas grew up the son of a preacher near modern-day Winston-Salem, North Carolina. His dad, William Wise, would teach his son a Bible lesson every night for about an hour before bed. Young Thomas hung on every word from his father, so even though he was young by preaching standards at only 20 years old, Thomas knew his Bible extremely well. The Gilly Creek Baptist Church flourished, and the congregation grew to nearly 50 in only a few months. Thomas balanced farming and frontier life in the 1700s with pastoring a church, no small task. His routine was the same each week. Thomas would pray on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday specifically to be given the sermon to preach on Sunday. Then by Thursday, he always had his message. On Fridays, he wrote and prepared his sermons. Then, on Saturday after work and a late dinner, Thomas would climb the trail up the church alone. Here, in the quiet solitude of the church he had built with his own hands, he would preach the next morning's sermon to empty pews and under flickering oil lamps. This was how Thomas prepared each week, and he never deviated from this routine, for to do so would be an affront to his mission, his calling, his congregation, and his Lord. On the last Saturday of August 1765, Thomas Wise had his first encounter with the haunts of Gilly Creek. He only mentioned this event to his wife Alice once, and never again. Alice eventually told their eldest daughter, Amelia, who would recall the stories once the happenings, as they called them, began not long after the passing of Thomas. That late August night in 1765 was unseasonably warm for the mountains on North Carolina, and Thomas Wise wiped sweat from his brow as he entered the dark church. Lighting the oil lamps, soon the warm glow of light illuminated the small country church, and Thomas spread his notes upon the lectern at the altar, and started to pray over the message and each part of the service coming the next day. Next, Thomas took his notes and opened his Bible to the book of Nehemiah. He would be preaching the next day to the congregation concerning the first chapter, and on this night, as was his custom, he began to preach the sermon to the empty pews and flickering oil lamps in preparation for the real thing on Sunday. The message could best be summed up by the example of rebuilding Jerusalem after the Great Exile. God could overturn the decrees and plans of man, but man was helpless to stop the will of God. Wise hammered that message home to the empty church during this regular Saturday night practice run. At precisely the moment when the message ended, as was his custom, even practicing to the empty church on Saturday night, Thomas Wise always gave the invitation to come to the altar. He carefully chose his words, and precisely in the middle of his practice invitation, Reverend Thomas Wise saw movement outside the windows on the right side of the church. Earlier, on the walk up to the church, Thomas had a feeling as though someone were watching him. Perhaps this was his watcher, he thought. Peering through the windows into the moonlit night, Thomas saw a dark figure wearing a long black frock coat and wide-brimmed hat, first standing, then walking to the other end of the church, passing each window, looking as though he were darker than the night itself. After passing the last window, Thomas waited to see if the visitor kept on walking or came to the front door. He held his breath listening for any signs as the visitor was out of sight from the windows now. The doorknob squeaked, protesting as it was slowly turned. The door swung open in dramatic fashion, and the distinct displacement of the air could be felt as a breeze blew in from the door as though a storm were approaching. The oil lamps flickered, and shadows danced upon the walls looking like menacing demons, a premonition of what was to come. Along with the breeze came the unmistakable aroma of death, a smell that Thomas, unfortunately, was aware of. For as a 12-year-old boy, his father had sent him to a hermit living in a swamp with a bag of vegetables. When the young 12-year-old Thomas knocked on the door of the cabin, he found it wasn't latched, and as the door swung open, he encountered a cloud of flies and the pungent smell of rotting flesh. On the floor of the cabin lay the hermit dead as the rancid stench caused Thomas to lose his stomach, throwing up his breakfast. As Thomas's mind raced back to the present, he felt the same nauseating feeling in his stomach and the same smell with one extremely strange exception. Every now and then, thought the wafting stench of death. Thomas smelled the unmistakable sweet smell of honeysuckle.
Carson, are you okay?
My name isn't Carson.
What can I do for you?
Preach on, preacher.
You need to leave.
I came here to hear the good news, Reverend Wise. Will you show me your grace? Will you save me?
You are a wraith of Satan. You're beyond salvation. You saw the glory of the Lord long ago and chose to rebel against the God of heaven along with a third of all the angels. I don't stand in my own power, but the power of Christ. Leave this place.
I'll go when I'm ready. I have a question of you.
I will not stand to be questioned by any devil or wraith. Leave this church.
My kind, as you might say, we live on a leash of sorts. You've read Job, have you not? Who brought up Job as a worthy man for testing and trial? Was it Satan? No, it was God. Ask yourself, preacher, in the quiet time of your study, in the solitude of your prayers, ask God why he even has a leash. Why not just do away with the whole lot of us?
If I answer your question about the leash, will you leave?
I come and go as I please in this world, Reverend Wise. My leash or my contract does provide me that liberty. I swear by Hades that I will never relinquish any freedom I'm granted. Good, I see that you feel appropriately small. You can feel my power, can't you? Yes, you can. But it doesn't have to be this way, preacher. You see, I can make this church flourish for you, sir.
Please, leave me be.
Thomas, don't you want to see your church grow? Don't you want to take this valley and those that surround here in the name of your Savior? Don't you want to be known as the preacher who saved the wilderness and all her people from the wrath of God?
No, I don't lie. I always tell the truth.
You're such an idiot, but there is a better way, and I can help.
You are a wraith of the devil, and I am tired of this banter.
And I am tired of this banter. I will assure you, Reverend Wise, that this valley is mine. You see, this valley is my leash. This valley belongs to me, but you think it yours, preacher. You think by the grace of God it all belongs to you. Think about how you have prospered since arriving here in this wild place. Do you really think that is God's hand? I swear, by all that's false, no, sir, it is my hand. Thomas Wise felt the power of God as he replied that if the prosperity he was having was coming from the powers of darkness, he would rather suffer in righteousness. Thomas explained that he would take the valley from the wraith by the power of God and God alone. He assured the wraith that he had no fear of him or his power. Weiss even took a single step down from the altar toward the wraith, but the wraith raised a hand, and Thomas literally fell over backwards. My name's Honeysuckle. I live here. You'll find the sweet-smelling vine of my namesake all over this valley. I can stop disease. I can make everything you do prosper. I can fill this church up with so many that you'll have to build it back 10 times larger. I can make them bring money too, and this church will flourish as though in the old world. I can make your name known, young preacher. Everyone in this young country will know the name of Thomas Augustus Wise. Great will be your name, Thomas. You will be protected here, and no one will see me. You will do my bidding. Well, I'll assure you that Honeysuckle the Wraith had gone too far with these last words to Thomas Wise, who thundered at the Wraith to leave the church. Thomas Wise would never do the devil's bidding, work, or will. He knew only one master, his Savior. That August night, Honeysuckle left weakly, but promised that after Thomas Wise passed on to glory, his generations who bore his name would have to deal with the wraith of Gilly Creek, known as Honeysuckle. True to his word, this didn't happen until after Thomas Wise died on Christmas Day in 1855, at the ripe old age of 95. The Cherokee had called the valley Anitzasgili, meaning land of the ghost devils. In due time after Reverend Thomas passed away, the one main ghost devil would take back his valley and haunt it until the Lord returned. This story is exactly what Amelia Wise Bonner, Thomas and Alice's eldest daughter, told my great-great-grandfather Sewell. It is a story that many know, and Honeysuckle, regretfully, is a being that many know also. As for me, I've never seen him, and I don't want to see him. Many were not so lucky. There you go. Would you like another cup of coffee? The fire is down almost to coals, and the river seems quieter this time of night. Next time we're out and about, I'll tell you another story. As for now, just ponder on this one from tonight. It was the first real haunting, and after